Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Work From Home Show. Shout out to all our homies, homeboys, homegirls, home trans, all the work from homers out there. I'm Naresh Vissa with Adam Schroeder. Today we have Joe Yogerst on the show. He is a multiple New York Times bestselling author of 50 States, 5,000 Ideas, Where to Go, When to Go, What to See, What to Do, as well as 100 Parks, 5,000 Ideas, Where to Go, When to Go, What to See, What to Do. Also 100 Drives, 5,000 Ideas, Where to Go, When to Go, What to Do, What to See. And the new book, 100 Cities. Adam, do you have a guess as to how many ideas?
I'm going to guess 4,833.
That's actually a good idea. Maybe that should be your next book, though. But no, it's actually 100 Cities, 5,000 Ideas, Where to Go, When to Go, What to See, What to Do. Joe, thank you so much for joining us on the Work From Home Show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll keep that title in mind for the next one. So
I agree. I think that would be a great title, and your fans will be like, "Oh wow, this is going to be really, really different." Well, let's start with. I want to first start with how you got this idea for writing. Obviously, there's consistency in every book with the 5,000 ideas, with the where to go, when to go, what to see, what to do. What got you to start writing about traveling and writing about 5,000 ideas?
Well, I've been writing about places since forever. I mean, since I was in college, really. I was a sports writer back in those days, but I also tended to, when I went to South Bend or Columbus for games at Notre Dame or Ohio State, I would always somehow manage to get in a little story about what it was like to visit those places. So it started very early, and my college major was actually geography. So writing about travel became kind of a natural thing. I was a writer and I liked going places, and I made a career of it. And I spent 16 years trying to get my first assignment from National Geographic. And once I did, it's kind of never slackened off. The first one was 1999, and they called out of the blue and asked me if I wanted to drive from Texas to Argentina and write a book about the Pan American Highway for them. And of course I said yes.
Oh man, that's a drive.
And that was the first of somewhere between 40 and 50 book projects for them. And other than the Pan American Highway book, a lot of them in the beginning were with a team of writers, 4 or 5 or 6 of us that would, have certain themes or certain regions of the world that we would take in a book and write about. And then back in 2017, my editor said, well, we have this new book. It's called 50 States, 5,000 Ideas. And what would you like to write in it? And I said, I'd like to write the whole thing. And I was surprised because she said yes right away. So it came out, and you never know how a book is going to do, even when it's backed by National Geographic. And it was an overnight bestseller. It has sold around 500,000 copies in 6 years. It is one of the top 3 selling travel books in the U.S. of the 21st century. And it just keeps selling. Just last week, it was on both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal bestseller lists for nonfiction in the top 10. And so once that started selling, National Geographic basically came back and said, what can we do next? And so we've been doing 1 book per year, and we kind of kick around ideas. And COVID kind of messed up things because this was supposed to be the 4th book in the series after the first one and parks and road trips, the drives. And, people stopped traveling in 2020 because of the pandemic. So they said to me at that point in time, well, stop the cities book, and we want you to write 2 others, one on camping and glamping, and another one on hiking trails, which comes out next year. And so I did those two and finished them, and then they said go back to cities, and I did, and we tried to figure out when are people going to start traveling again internationally, and this year definitely they are. That has been my experience, going to Europe 3 times already this year, and Mexico a couple times, and some other places, Canada twice this year already. International travel for Americans is definitely back, and in many cases just as strong as before.
I want to go into when you're traveling around, what places have you found, especially, as you're going to parks or, on drives, what places have you found that have been the most kind of remote work friendly, if you will, like that have been relatively easy, especially if you're doing a road trip like with your family or something and you're trying to get work done on the side because taking a real vacation is hard these days where you don't do anything, at least for those of us who do work from home like Naresh and myself. Like, where have you found are actually kind of friendlier places for doing that?
I would not characterize myself as a digital nomad because I rarely write when I'm on the road. And when I do, it's normally an assignment that's due that has nothing to do with what I'm doing at the time. So I'll be someplace, wherever, in Japan or Kenya or Brazil to write travel about those places. But I have, I do car reviews for Newport and Laguna Beach magazines in Southern California. And maybe I didn't get my car review done before I left on the trip, and I have to sit in a hotel room in Tokyo and write about a Porsche or a Cadillac or whatever it was that I test drove before. The person you should talk to about that is my older daughter, who really is a digital nomad, and she manages to go places and work for a week, and it just like water off a duck's back. I mean, she's done it this year in Barcelona and Mexico City. She's about to do it in Chile and South America. She has no problem whatsoever hopping on a plane with her laptop, putting in a 9 to 5, 8 hours of workday at a new place, and then going out at night and on the weekends and acting like a normal tourist. So I'm kind of learning from her how to do it, funny enough. When I go someplace, I'm still taking notes and talking to people and, taking photos so that I remember details later on, and rarely ever getting on my laptop and having to write. So that's why I don't necessarily have a favorite place or a place that's easy. My daughter has taught me that anywhere that has a good Wi-Fi connection is easy to work in. So
I want to know how you were able to. You said your book is one of the top 3 travel books of the millennium. I want to know how you were able to make that happen. There are a lot of travelers out there. They have blogs, they write books. Was it a specific book deal, like the first book deal that you did with a major publisher, or was it that you blogged and built up a big following? Was it social media?
No, I really, it's the National Geographic brand, and it's how good their sales and marketing people are. They do deals that are just from a different planet. Last week, this book, 100 Cities, 5,000 Ideas, was a category on Celebrity Jeopardy. And that just blew my mind. A neighbor texted me and said, "You're on Jeopardy." And I said,
an entire
"How's
category
that possible?
too, not
I'm
one
sitting at
question.
home."
Not one question,
And,
an entire category.
Yeah, it was an entire category. The category was National Geographic's 100 Cities, 5,000 Ideas. And Ken Jenkins, who's the host, said, "New book from National Geographic, this category, and there are 5 questions out of this book."
Yeah.
And,
did you get them all right?
I have to confess that I didn't. I
Oh
missed the
my
one.
God.
I missed the one about Stockholm because I was too quick to answer. So, So if I'd been more patient, I would have gotten them all right, but I wasn't. I was too fast on my home clicker. And I asked Ann Day, who's the marketing and sales, the head there, the next day, how did you do this? And she said, I just pitched them idea and they said yes right away. So she just has the connections and she gets stuff done, and her whole team there, and the PR agency they work with. And it's a great team, and they know what they're doing it because they've been doing it for years. And it helps. And I find when I go around, just saying you're from National Geographic opens up doors that wouldn't otherwise be open. So yeah, it's a lot to do. It's not so much to do with me. It's the fact that that name is behind it. I think that there's some luck involved in getting initial momentum. The fact that 50 States, the original book, sold so well in the beginning and continued to sell well, I think it snowballed with these other books. They kind of started slowly, Parks and Drives, and then eventually built up momentum where all three of those books are now constantly in the top 10 or 20 in their categories. And even Unexpected Things, where there's some of the best-selling or the best-selling travel books for Americans going to Canada, are these books, so, which I would have never guessed. So Unexpected Things happen too. So you just build up momentum and you build up a brand name. I mean, Stephen King and John Grisham have it, and you buy the books because you know that it's going to be of a certain standard or a certain style. And I think people buy these books for the same reason, that they know the writing and information is going to be interesting. The photographs are going to be incredible. They're going to be easy to read. They're going to be part armchair and part planning. The price point is really, really good. And they make great gifts. I think that a lot. I know. I always check the sales around Thanksgiving and on Black Friday because so many people buy Christmas gifts at that time, and that's when the sales on these books always spike. Is November and early December.
What I took away from what you said is that get a deal with National Geographic. They'll market, promote you. You'll become a New York Times bestselling author. But how did you get that deal? Did you know someone there? Did you just randomly shoot them a letter in the mail with your manuscript?
I did in the beginning. After college, after I graduated, I was a sports writer in the beginning. I got a job as an editor on a national soccer magazine, and after a year and a half decided I didn't want to deal with professional athletes because 90% of them were jerks.
I don't blame you.
And I had an interest in travel anyways, and I wrote away to every newspaper in the US that had a foreign bureau at that time and didn't get a single response. So I kind of said, to heck with it, I'm going to go be my own foreign correspondent. So I quit my job, took money out of the bank, sold my Ford Pinto, bought a one-way ticket to some place I thought I could be a freelance foreign correspondent, and it was South Africa at that time. And I spent a year in Africa basically writing for, I got some assignments from people like the Washington Post and things like that, but I wrote away to an editor at National Geographic, Noel Grove, and he was kind enough to write back to me, although it was like out of the blue. And I didn't get an assignment from him, but we kept up a correspondence for 16 years. And when they called me out of the blue to do the Pan American Highway book, The Drive from Argentina to Texas, it was another editor that got my name from him. So 16 years of knocking on the door and keeping up a very loose once-a-year correspondence with this guy is what finally got me in the door there. And they also saw an article that I'd written for Islands magazine, which was a big deal back in those days, of a place that I'd gone to in India that that very few people had been to. And I'd written this long article and actually taking the photos for it for Islands magazine. And they were very impressed by that. And they said, we want you to do this Pan American Highway book for us. So yeah, it was 16 years of determination, and just, like I said, keeping up though this subtle connection and talking to this guy once a year. That's what got me in the door.
Eating the elephant one bite at a time. I love it. So you've gone around. We are obviously in a situation in our nation where there's a lot of people who just talk at each other, don't listen, and all of that. You've done 50 states, 100 parks, 100 drives, 100 cities. You've obviously been all over the nation. Tell us a little bit about kind of what you've experienced whenever you're out there. Has it been that people are pretty much the same everywhere? Have you noticed stark differences? What have you learned about the country and all of your travels around?
Well, one thing I've learned is that everywhere you go, there are interesting things. I grew up on the West Coast, and because of the industry I'm in, went to New York and Washington, D.C. a lot on the East Coast. And, I had been to Chicago before I started doing these books, and Texas, funny enough. Texas and Chicago was really what I knew, and if you don't count the coasts. And so, and some cities that I went to as a sports writer way back when, South Bend for Notre Dame, Columbus for Ohio State and things. So I had to start exploring places that I'd never been before. And I really found that every place has multiple interesting things to do and places to see. Oklahoma is always the example that comes to mind. I probably would have never traveled to Oklahoma if it wasn't for professional reasons. But I've now been there 3 times, and each time I go, I find something new and interesting. And I've kind of seen it change over the years. There's my favorite national wildlife refuge is in Oklahoma, and I would have never guessed that. It's the Wichita Mountains. So there actually are mountains in Oklahoma. And it's one of the places that saved the American bison from extinction because they shipped this small herd of bison there by train and then herded them into the park. And it was the nucleus in the earliest century for a lot of the herds that exist now. It was one of the places, along with Montana and Wyoming, that helped save the bison. So you go there today and you see the descendants of this wild bison herd, and you can climb mountains and do these amazing hikes in Oklahoma. There's a little town called Hugo, Oklahoma, that everyone knows that Sarasota, Florida was where the circuses went for the winter, but they also went to Hugo, Oklahoma. And there's no remnants of the circuses there like there is in Sarasota, but there's a cemetery where a lot of the circus entertainers are buried, and their tombstones reflect what they did, whether they were a clown or a trapeze artist or they worked with animals, and it's a fascinating, interesting little cemetery with these amazing tombstones. That again it's Oklahoma. The food scene there has, and especially in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, has changed remarkably from when I first went there to the last trip. Tulsa is an amazing town for Art Deco architecture, and the Woody Guthrie Center and the new Bob Dylan Museum that are there. So, like I said, I would have never gone to Oklahoma and discovered these things if it wasn't for professional reasons. And now I always say, yeah, sure, give it a chance. Every place, North Dakota is another place that I discovered through this book that had amazing things to do, like Teddy Roosevelt National Park, and the whole Missouri River corridor through North Dakota. So, yeah, there's out of the way places, like I said, and they all have something interesting to do, something fascinating.
Well, that's Joe Yogerst. Check out all his books, which have to do with 5,000 ideas. His latest book is 100 Cities, 5,000 Ideas, Where to Go, When to Go, What to See, What to Do. The website is joeyogerst.com. The last name is spelled Yogerst, Yogerst. Joe, any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners or anything else you want to promote?
Well, I had a camping and glamping book that came out earlier this year for National Geographic. That was the 4th book in this series. And then I have a book on 100 of my favorite hiking trails in Canada and the U.S. that comes out in the spring in time for the summer hiking season. So yeah, there's 2 others, and but 100 Cities is published today, and I think it makes a great gift, and especially if you're interested in getting back into international travel, this is a great way to get some ideas and to start planning.
Joe, thank you so much for joining us once again on the Work From Home Show. To all our listeners, check us out at workfromhomeshow.com. That's www.workfromhomeshow.com. Get on our mailing list there. We always send out freebies, special ebooks around Black Friday time, also at other points during the year. So get on our mailing list there. Follow us on social media. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on a few other platforms. If you have any questions at all, hello@workfromhomeshow.com. That's how you can contact us. hello@workfromhomeshow.com. And until next week, keep on working from home.